Welcome to the first video in Unit 8. This unit is going to connect a lot of the things that we've talked about thus far. For example, this first section is on Eastern Hemisphere trade routes. So we're going to talk about the trade connections throughout Asia, Europe, Northern Africa, all the areas we've talked about thus far this year. We'll also cover in this unit Japan, which will connect to the ideas of feudalism. They will also have a feudal society. We'll talk about kingdoms in Africa that emerge and their adoption of the Islamic faith. And we'll end this unit in the Americas, where we will talk about some of the civilizations that emerge in Central and South America. This is a longer unit than our previous couple units, so it will be broken into 4 videos. So this is the first of 4 videos. This first video is going to focus on trade routes between 1000 and 1500 AD or CE. So on this map here, you can see the key tells us that the brown lines and the blue lines are trade routes. The brown lines being trade routes across the land, the blue lines representing the trade routes across the sea. So we see a connection between Asia, Europe, and Africa. All can reach one another with at least one trade route, if not many different trade routes. And we're going to talk today about some of the most important trade routes that developed that really connected these parts of the world. The empires of this era did not grow in isolation of each other, meaning they were not separated from each other completely. Merchants traded products and shared ideas and technology. We've discussed this throughout each unit that we've covered, the goods that are traded, the goods that they produce, and we're just going to go in more detail in the overarching view of trade routes, and we'll talk about some specific goods that are traded. The Silk Road is going to be arguably one of the most important trade routes in history. This is really going to be the main connection between Asia and Europe and Northern Africa. All of these will be connected together because of the Silk Road. So the Silk Road crossed Asia from China to Europe. This was the main route. The Silk Road does not get its name because it's a single road. Okay, the Silk Road represents the idea that one of the major goods traded on the Silk Road was silk, but it is many different roads, many different waterways. There is a lot of different routes that connect China to Europe, all of which are known as the Silk Road. The Silk Road, as I just said, was not one road, but a combination of paths, roads, and sea routes. Most merchants would only work on one section of the route, not travel the entire thing. So you see all of the black dots on the route, those represent different cities. So one person, a merchant, might work from one city to the next. They would take their goods, say from this city to this city. They would trade goods there and travel back to this city. So they might only travel from one city to another, or just a couple of cities, or on one sea route. You see the sea routes down here. They would not travel the entire road. That would take a long time. Products were transported by camel, caravan, donkeys, or by boat. Specific animals are suited to the climates of some of the areas where we see the trade routes. For example, camels are going to be really good in desert environments. So across the Arabian Peninsula, across Northern Africa, camels are going to be used. They have an especially good ability to hold water, and so that's going to be a huge benefit in places where there isn't a lot. Governments built watchtowers and rest stations in some areas of the route to help travelers, so that travelers would be safe while they traveled along the road. This was the government's way of encouraging trade. Trade is really what helps different civilizations flourish, do really well. And so the governments of the different civilizations are really going to help this trade route extend and be fully established. The Silk Road was responsible for spreading many products, ideas, religions, and diseases from Eastern Asia to Europe. So it's important to note that it's not just traded goods. It is also religions, and it is also diseases. We'll talk about some of these religions and diseases as we cover it in more detail, But definitely the ones that should come to your mind right away include Buddhism spreading from India to Eastern Asia. In terms of diseases, the bubonic plague is going to be spread through trade, but not just major plagues. Also, smaller diseases that don't affect as many people, they will also be spread through trade. The more people that interact, the more diseases spread. Textiles are going to come from India. Porcelain, tea, and gunpowder will come from China. Rugs will come from Persia. So these are just some of the goods that these different areas are known for. And we will talk about more specifics as we move through here. In terms of technology that is traded, paper and woodblock printing from China are going to be used, they're going to be traded, the ideas, and they will be used for paper money in a lot of different places. So the way that woodblock printing works is you see in this image here, it is going to require a person to etch into a block of wood. They cut away all the pieces that they don't want as part of whatever the print is going to be. And then they would put ink on the outside of whatever else is sticking up, put that onto paper or some other surface, and that would create the imprint of the whatever it is they were going for. We'll take a look at a video of how woodblock printing works in class, and the video shows it really well. Compasses also used for navigation. We've talked about the importance of knowing where you're going, what direction you're going when it comes to trade, when it comes to travel, exploration, and all of this is really important in this time period. So compasses are very important. Included in this idea of technology that spreads are the ideas of water wheels and windmills. They come from the Middle East, and they're important because they're using the power of the wind and the power of water to do things like the grinding of grain. So that's going to help with food production. Ideas that are spread include religion. We've talked about Buddhism spreading from India. Buddhism starts in India, spreads from northern India to China, and eventually to Korea and Japan. And it remains a major religious belief in each of these areas today. We'll talk about Japan later in this unit, and they have two major religions, one of which, even still today, is Buddhism. Hinduism and Buddhism spread from India to Southeast Asia. So while Buddhism spread to China, Korea, and Japan, it's also going to be spread to Southeast Asia as well. So this area down here. But Hinduism will also follow into this area. So we see both religions spreading into this region. Islam, we already know, spreads from the Middle East into Western Africa, Central and Southeastern Asia, the areas of Indonesia. Everything on this map that is green is largely Muslim areas, so practicing the religion of Islam. It is going to spread easier, faster on trade routes, just like Buddhism, just like Hinduism. Maritime trade routes connected Africa, India, and the Middle East. Maritime means of or related to the sea, so routes on the sea, routes that are taken by ship. Traders move goods from port to port. It is easier, it is cheaper, it is faster to transport by sea, but it may not be as safe depending on the area that you're traveling. Depends on the winds and the weather that happens in those areas. So we see on this map, again, we have both land and sea routes. Goods that come from India on the Silk Road include spices such as cinnamon, clove, and curry, textiles like rugs, new crops like sugarcane, and lateen sails all come from India. So this would be an example of a lateen sail. So this is going to make sailing easier, more productive, faster. This would be sugarcane here. You see the textiles in the form of rugs here, and some of the spices up here. There's another trade route that crosses northern Africa, and this trade route is known as the Trans-Saharan route. This crosses the Sahara Desert in northern Africa. It connected the empires of Africa, including Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, with Europe and the Middle East. We're going to talk more about Ghana, Mali, Songhai, Axum, and Zimbabwe, 5 of the empires in Africa, when we get to Africa in this unit. But this trade route is going to be important because it connects across a major desert. So in this trade route, we will see the use of a lot of camels, because again, camels are good for travel over deserts because they can store water so well and so long. Goods from Africa, the 2 big ones are going to be salt and gold. Salt is really important for the preservation of meat, would be a great example of why salt would be sought after, and gold for its value. Southeast Asia was involved in trade as well. Connected Japan, China, and Southeast Asia, sea routes. These sea routes helped these areas have similar cultures and religions. The biggest thing traded on these routes were different spices. And again, sea routes are going to be used. So up here is China, and then Southeastern Asia is down here, and then Japan would be up over here off the map. In Northern Europe, goods were largely moved through rivers, again, faster and easier. Roads were also unsafe and not maintained after the fall of the Roman Empire. People traded along the Baltic Sea through the rivers of Russia to Constantinople and the Black Sea. Goods, technology, and ideas from Asia spread into Europe, helping them become more advanced. So these are some of the routes. This here is Scandinavia, so this would be the Northern European area. You see a lot of sea routes in here. It's going to be a lot faster than going all the way up and around on the land for Scandinavia to just go on the sea routes here. And then here we see the Black Sea. Constantinople would be here. Up here is Scandinavia. And so we see the trade routes exist between these Northern European regions to the Eastern European regions and to Constantinople. European trade, some of the goods. Amber was a popular good from the Baltic region up by the Baltic Sea. Amber is fossilized tree resin used often to make jewelry. If you've ever seen Jurassic Park, that is what I think it was a mosquito, was preserved inside of amber, and that's how they got the DNA for the dinosaurs to create the whole movie, or the set of movies, I suppose. So these are some different examples of amber. It's a very common jewelry you can get today, and it is made out of tree resin. That is the end of the first video in Unit 8.